I do eat chocolate all the time. I eat 88% dark chocolate. It's my thing. So
like all the time, because I haven't seen you eat a piece of chocolate since we.
Oh, don't worry. I have some stash. Don't worry.
They say a journey begins in a single step, or in my case, one less piece of bread. My name is Chad, and I'm your test subject. I have sought out an expert in the field of nutrition and fitness who I hoped would help me feel, well, better. They call him the biohacker, but I call him Eric. I hope you'll join me on a path that leads you and I to optimal fitness as we live our lives in ketosis. This is the Life in Ketosis podcast, a biohacker's guide to optimal body performance.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chad, and this is episode 24 of my quest to achieving optimal body performance with the man that can get me there, the biohacker himself, Mr. Eric Bischoff. Every episode, I'll be sharing my actual results, both successes and failures, as Eric teaches me how to apply the principles of ketogenics and functional movement to look and feel fantastic. Just as a reminder, the first 5 episodes of our podcast are our foundational episodes. That's where you'll get your foundational knowledge on ketogenics and functional movement. If you haven't listened to those yet, please push pause now, go back, listen to those episodes, and then join us back here. And we hope everybody's doing awesome. We hope everybody's in the mood for some good ketogenic information. I'm stoked for today's episode because it's a special one. We have a guest. First off, how are you, Eric?
Good. Thank you. How are you, Chad?
Good. And this is our first this is our first time recording remotely. So Eric and I are not in the same room. Yeah. And so
a little different.
Yeah, it's a little different. We're getting used to that. But we also have a guest with us remote from Colorado, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Boulder, Colorado.
Boulder. Yeah, Boulder. We love Boulder.
Yeah. It's amazing.
You have to take your bike when you go to Boulder.
Yep. Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. That's the preferred mode of transportation.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. So we have Shawn Mynar with us, and Shawn Mynar does a lot of really cool stuff. And one of the things that she does is she runs a podcast or hosts a podcast called Women. Remind me. So it's
Keto for Women.
Keto for Women.
Yeah.
The Keto for Women show.
Yes, exactly.
Cool. We are so happy to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. I loved obviously talking about keto, but even more specifically, the women in the population that need to hear this information. Yeah.
So, and we were explaining to you before we hit record, I was explaining to you, we have a handicap here at Life in Ketosis podcast, and that is that we do not have a woman's perspective. And, so that's kind of what sparked our conversation. Before we get into that, I'm going to give your, a traditional bio for Shawn really quick, and then we're going to let her kind of explain who she is and background and all of that kind of stuff. So here we go. Shawn Mynar is a holistic nutritionist based out of Boulder, Colorado. After years of chronic health issues, Shawn was able to regain complete health by changing the food she puts on her plate, the lifestyle choices she makes, and the mindset she brings to daily life. She now has made it her life's mission to help others understand and implement the power of using food as medicine. I love that. Specifically with a high-fat, low-carb approach. She has an online holistic nutrition practice specializing in women's health, autoimmune disease, hormonal imbalances, and gut health. She also teaches a group class, the Fat Burning Female Project, that takes women through a process of becoming keto adapted with a safe, effective approach. Shawn shares her knowledge and experience with the masses on her podcast, The Keto for Women Show, and her website, ShawnMynar.com. And it's ShawnMynar.com. So that's the formal introduction. Thanks for sending that. Now let's get real. Let's have you just talk to us. Who are you? What are you about? What's kind of your background?
Well, like you mentioned, I'm a holistic nutritionist. I got into this role through my own health issues, which I think happens to a lot of us in this holistic health world. Something goes awry, and we are the type of people that really try to dig deep and try to find out what's actually going on and are not okay with just taking medication after medication after medication. So this came to me through autoimmune disease. I was diagnosed with my first autoimmune disease, ulcerative colitis, in 2008. And for a while, I was fine, just taking the pills, doing what the doctor told me, not thinking anything much of it. Now looking back, I realized I was in a really high stress situation, and my entire life was kind of a stressed out mess. So now that I realize that, I could have worked on that, but didn't know that at the time. So anyway, and then it got to a point where the medication wasn't working. It was just kind of barely masking symptoms, not doing a whole lot. And I just didn't want to be on it for the rest of my life. So asked the doctor. Doctor said, it has nothing to do with the food you're putting on your plate. Didn't believe that. So then I went to Dr. Google, and within one night was able to find all these stories of people that have successfully reversed their autoimmune disease, put them into remission by eating real food, basically like a paleo type diet. So next day, cleaned out my cupboards, went paleo, and got a really amazing benefits from it. Just put my autoimmune disease into remission for the most part, still having a little bit of issue, but felt a lot better, had a lot more energy, all the good stuff. And then slowly over the next few years, I started to have more health issues. I was still eating paleo. I was doing everything right. But I kept having these random health issues that would come up, just symptoms that didn't make sense for what I was doing, and just feeling really terrible. And it led to more digging. And at this time, I had already gone through the Nutritional Therapy Association. So I was a practitioner at that point. Again, knew how to do all of this stuff. I was putting everything that I had learned, everything I'm teaching to my clients, into practice myself, and it wasn't working. So a lot of digging. I'm just one of those people that I have to get to the bottom of it. Took a long time to get there, but I finally realized it was actually from a mold situation, toxic mold situation that I was living in, and it was causing me to become really super sick and have all these random health issues. So along with a massive protocol for that type of thing, it made sense to me and my background and what I knew about nutrition and health and all that stuff, that keto was the next step. Because I was dealing with massive brain fog, memory loss, just tons of inflammation chronically throughout my entire body, uncontrollable weight gain, even while eating a paleo diet, just stuff that just didn't make sense. And I knew all of that led back to keto being a possible answer, something that I could do to at least get some symptom management, symptom control. So I went keto, and that was a year and a half ago almost, and it completely changed my life. I completely regained my health. Again, I was on another protocol, but still was able to have such symptom improvement that I could actually feel like myself again. I'm one of those people that I figure out something works and I want to tell everyone. Every single person that comes into contact with me needs to know what's up. So, started the podcast, started the class, and yeah, I did make a few mistakes along the way because I didn't know that it was different for women, or that I should be kind of looking at things in a little different light. And that led me to have kind of this new approach to where women are getting the benefits of keto instead of some of the side effects that can come with it if you don't do it right. So that's me. It's where I am.
Yeah. I have one quick question.
Yeah.
For you going paleo, okay,
then
you made the switch. It was working for you, but then you made the switch to the ketogenic, okay? Was the attraction of the ketogenic, was it more the changing of the macronutrients, which would change your micronutrients, of course, like in obtaining more fat, lowering your carbs, and your insulin, of course, resistance? Or was it the attraction of the beta hydroxybutyrate molecule? Were you in it that far at that time, or didn't realize how therapeutic that molecule really has become? So I was just curious, what was the attraction that made you make that switch? Because there's a lot of people out there suffering autoimmune diseases, severe inflammation, obesity, metabolic syndrome, but most of the people aren't attracted to it to make the change because they don't really understand the beta hydroxybutyrate molecule. So if you listen to my podcast, that's what I'm all about, the beta.
Right. Totally. Yes. And because I had done so much research, I was already a nutritionist. I was interested in producing ketones because I wanted that therapeutic healing intervention and I needed it so badly to get back to feeling remotely normal. And that's when it wasn't so much about changing the diet for any sort of, I mean, I'm not really a huge macronutrient counter anyways. I just eat a lot of fat.
You keep it simple.
Yeah. But I was really interested in developing that whole system and getting it really dialed in with my body. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Good. Because I was a vegan 2 years before I made the switch over to the keto. But my switch over was just due to more of a ego base and a competitive nature, like for an Ironman. And so I started training for that, but then I finally really got really deep into it and got into therapeutic and really studied it. So I jumped from vegan straight into keto. One day, no more vegan. Next day I'm eating meat, dairy products, everything else. So that was a shock.
Yeah, but a good change, I feel like.
It's a couple years ago. I've been keto a couple years.
Love it.
No, that's cool. All right,
so
great.
Let's jump right in. So one of the things that we wanted to tackle is how and if keto is different for women. And I think we can pretty much, say, yes, absolutely, keto is different for women. And that was the main purpose for having you on, Shawn, to give us some of that information, give us that woman's voice, talk about why it is different. Now, I'll say this, as Eric and I have talked about this subject and we've researched it because we've wanted to address it a lot of different ways, a lot of different times. And there is a lot of conflicting information out there about what it does to you more hormonally, through menstrual cycle and all of that kind of stuff. So that some people will claim, yes, it's different. Some people claim, no, it's actually just the same. Some people will say it balances hormones. Some people will say it imbalances hormones. And so I'm not saying we're going to get to the bottom of all of it in the discussion, but you bring a lot of information to the table that I think could be helpful for women, especially as they're considering it or, starting it and experimenting in it and noticing differences in their life and that kind of stuff. So let's start really basic. How is keto different for women than it is for men?
Well, it's the one big difference. It's the hormones, right? So that's really this big umbrella topic is we have to think about our hormones when we as women are making any change to our lives, whether it's diet or starting a new job or going through a divorce or whatever it is. We have hormones that are super sensitive to anything that we do that creates a stressor on our body. And we all live in this world already that is super stressed out. And we are already in this very chronic state of stress, just all of us, but as women and moms and that kind of situation. And then we add on this change to our diet, which while is such a great thing, if we go one day, like going from vegan to keto, if we go anything remotely close to that, it could even be that you're eating kind of like a real food paleo diet, but you're including carbs even a little bit at every meal. And then all of a sudden you go to not ever eating carbs again. Like that's stressful on your body and your hormones are going to react to that. Because again, you can kind of think of it in this very basic way of your body is always in tune with whether it's a good time or not for you to create another human. That's what we as women do, right? That's why we have the cycles that we have. So if there's any chance that it's not a good time, that your body's under stress, there's not enough food, there's not the right quantity, macronutrients of food, anything like that, then your body's going to stop doing that. Your body's going to take that as a sign. It's not a good time. There's some stress. Let's back off here and those hormones get out of whack. So you can think of it very simplistically in that way, and it really makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great framework for it. When you really think it, when you talk and break down the functionality of our bodies and specifically women's bodies, is that's really that's what the system is gauging at all moments of time, right?
Exactly.
And I also have to say, I need to put this out there. men have it so much easier than women. When it comes to picking diet or stressors on the body or anything like that, like we can just decide one day, oh, I'm going to change this and just try it out, you know, and we don't really have to think much about how that's going to, I mean, if you want to start getting to Eric's level where you're thinking about performance and, you know, muscle reaction and lactate and all that kind of stuff, obviously you want to consider all of these details. But for the most of us that just want to lose some weight and feel good, we have it pretty dang easy.
You really do. I'm very jealous.
Make no bones about it. And that's not a brag. That's I don't know what that is. I just want to make that clear.
But it's different. It's definitely very different. And it's something where we as women have to consider that. And we also have to like take a step back from the men in our lives and understand that what happens in their situation, if they're also trying keto or whatever they're trying, is not going to be the same. Like you can't compare yourself whatsoever.
Yeah, it's apples and oranges.
Mm-hmm.
So Shawn, in your practice, as far as what I'm dealing with, there's a lot of hormonal issues. Okay, of course, with women, I'm going to be thyroid. I'm going to be cortisol, the adrenal glands. I've got fibromyalgia out there. I got hypothyroidism. So I'm always dealing with hormones, but more with women than I am with men. So men, I will have some testosterone issues, and I might, of course, I'm leaving out insulin, but insulin I'm dealing with everybody on. Insulin resistance. Okay. And I'm sure you are too.
Yes.
So on your percentage of, you have clients that are women and men, correct? Okay.
Mainly women, but yes, a few men.
Okay. So you're dealing with trying to balance all these hormones much more than I am. I have women and I'm balancing their thyroid. I get their biomarkers done. So as far as you, when you start with somebody, I mean, I look at the biomarkers of thyroid, then I get cortisol, and then I go from there and into the sex steroid hormones, et cetera. Where do you start at? If they're having issues, okay, what's the first gland you're going to go after? As far as, you know, I'm sure you can do symptoms and check their symptoms out. But what is the most popular, the most sought after gland that you have to start with biomarkers?
I'm pretty sure that's the first time that question, what gland do you go after first? I'm pretty sure that's the first time that question has ever been asked.
But I have an answer.
Oh, I know you do. That's why we have you. You have the answer. So where do you go?
That's why you two are connected on a different level.
So I am a huge adrenal person. I will always start. Yes, I will always start with the adrenals because I have worked with so many women and they are always off.
Right.
And I really think that that's something where a lot of things won't come into full alignment for that person until you address the stressors, until you really take a deep, hard look into what you're like. For me, I'm so passionate about the mindset shift that needs to happen to actually get truly healthy. Okay. And for women, and this is something that I hope we'll get to talk about coming up, we can do keto, we can do all of our bath time and all this stuff to try to relieve our stress. But if you're still telling yourself negative thoughts and you're still stuck in this diet mentality, you still have to count your calories, you still have to do all this stuff to try to lose weight, and you're not happy in your own skin, then you're going to be stressed. Like that's a stressor in itself.
I think that's the hardest one to go after.
It's so hard.
The mental or the environmental stressors, you have to take all that in consideration. The thyroid's a little, it's complex, but it's a little more direct. Okay?
Right. And with the adrenals, there's just so many factors feeding into it that you have to address, or you're never going to feel truly well again.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to know.
One thing that we really try to do on this podcast is it's great to talk about all of this stuff, but we also want to make sure that the rubber hits the road. And one thing that I would love to hear from you is, so as you talk about, you know, women thinking about doing the ketogenic diet or living the ketogenic lifestyle, where do you usually start them to, I guess, lessen the impact of this shock that's going to happen to their body? Something that any women listening can actually take out today and put into practice as they're thinking about starting it or have started it and they're feeling that shock to their system. How in your coaching or in your practice, how do you usually start with women to kind of lessen that blow?
So the two biggest things, first of all, take some time to transition yourself. I like to do about a month to where you are going from what you're currently doing, slowly increasing the fat, slowly decreasing the carbs, moderating the protein as you need to moderate the protein, but doing that over a period of time, just so you're kind of relieving some of that shock. It also I've noticed it helps a lot with like this keto flu situation, which everyone goes through. There's really no way around it, but you can really dampen those effects and, still get through the day when you take a slower approach as a woman. So I think that is really important to not just go, okay, it's Monday, I'm starting keto. Like, let's take it a little slower. That also gives you a really good opportunity to see how you feel at different stages, because you might be someone, and women especially, I think, have this a little like right, I guess, I don't know what I'll call it, to add a little bit more carbohydrate here and there. If that makes you feel better, if that gives you the energy that you need, if it helps you sleep better, whatever the case may be, but you can kind of see how you feel as you down level your carbohydrates and see how it goes. See if there's a spot where it's kind of your sweet spot. So I think that's really important. And the second one, which is my favorite topic to talk about, is don't go into keto thinking it's your next diet. Like, we, especially as women, I know men do this too, but it's so much more prevalent in women, have spent years dieting. Yeah. Like doing this, doing that, trying every next fad to see if it's the quick fix weight loss thing that you've been waiting for. It doesn't exist. That does not exist. And what it does when you think that way, it causes more problems down the road. That's why there's so many of us in this spot where we are right now, where we have these damaged metabolisms. We've been eating 1,200 calories a day for how many years, and our bodies are just shot. So just that in itself, just really reducing your calories more than your body wants you to, is, again, a stressor on the body. You have to nourish your body with good, nutrient-dense, high-quality foods. That's something that keto is really great at least in my version of keto. And you have to just really make sure that you're not, and it's so hard because the general keto, if you go to any blog, will be like, oh, I only had to eat 800 calories today because I wasn't hungry. But that's because you're in the diet mentality. If you're really looking to actually nourish your body, heal what you need to be have healed, then it's going to require some food. So get out of that diet mentality and do it for your health and not for the next quick fix, because it's not a quick fix. No matter how many people say it is, it's not. Trust me.
It's like what we teach. It's a lifestyle change.
It is.
And you have to go in it that way. Sure, we want to drop that body composition, get your health better. There's no better way than ketogenics to really do a good body composition change, get rid of the fat, et cetera. But it's got to be a lifestyle change. We teach.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's incredibly powerful. And I love that perspective.
Right.
And even me, I mean, you can hear it in the podcast. I'm trying to clean up my language. I do default to calling it the ketogenic diet, but it really is a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And those who are owning it, for the most part that I know of, are biofitters, friends, other people we've had on the podcast. They're saying, I'm keto for life.
Yeah.
It's not a diet. It is my life. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really interesting. You mentioned one thing that I picked up on when you said my version of keto, and everybody has their version of keto. Mm-hmm. I get that. I'd love for you to just give us a snapshot of what is Shawn Mynar's version of keto.
My version of keto, like I said, I naturally just prefer to eat a lot of fat. Like, it just comes very naturally to me. So of course, it's going to be a high-fat diet, and I think this is one thing that most women don't quite grab, is how much fat you're actually eating, especially when you're trying to make that transition into ketosis. There's some moderation that can happen once you're fully adapted, but I eat a ton of fat, and it is just amazing. I eat fatty cuts of meat. That really helps with that. But I like to make like my homemade mayo and ranch dressings and things like that to add to it. I'm pretty much dairy-free. Occasionally I'll have some dairy, but not often. And it is possible to be a dairy-free keto. Mm-hmm. It's very highly possible and works really well. So there's a lot of people that don't think it can happen, but it can. I'm proof.
That's good. That's awesome.
But yes, but another big piece of my keto that I really promote is vegetables, like so many veggies. I've never eaten more vegetables in my life, mainly because it is a good kind of vehicle for more fat. Like putting butter on your broccoli is kind of the most amazing thing ever. So, just I really focus on the nutrient density aspect of it and not just eating all the meat and all the cheese and all the cream and eggs and just calling it a day. Really getting that colorful plate every single meal is really important to me. And then as far as carbs go, I have to be perfectly honest. I just kind of eat them when I want to. Like I am very much in touch with my body, and what I guess kind of this intuitive eating aspect to know, hey, I had a hard workout today, or I did a little bit more power moves than I normally do, or something like that. Or I just want to eat carbs, then I'll have half a sweet potato or some plantains or something like that. Occasionally, I do eat chocolate all the time. I eat 88% dark chocolate. It's my thing. So
like all the time, because I haven't seen you eat a piece of chocolate since we.
Oh, don't worry, I have some stash. Don't worry. But yes, I do eat quite a bit of chocolate. The super dark is my favorite. So yeah, I just think, like I mentioned, I'm not a big macronutrient counter. I think we talked about that. And, I just kind of have developed a way that I know works. I know keeps me in ketosis, keeps me happy, things I like to eat, and also keeps me healthy, is providing this nutrient density that I need and not skimping on any of the veggies or anything like that.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, we do the same. I'm a cruciferous vegetable pusher. I mean, big salads. You can have the most endless salad for lunch every day. It's low carb. It's got all the phytonutrients you need. So we're always trying to spread that out, always. And I have those that can handle dairy. I can handle dairy very good, actually. But there's some who, if I do their gene testing, then if they got the FTO or PPAR and the other FAD and the other SNPs, then we know we got to pull them off a little bit of the saturated fat and kind of replace with mono. So do you do some of the genetic testing, or just kind of leave that on how they feel instead of having to go down that path and get that baseline from them? Or
there are some clients that already have that done that we'll look at, but most of the time I am very much just listen to your body. Right. You're able to find out all of this stuff, whether you tolerate certain things just by doing it or not doing it. I mean, I think especially with dairy, I think it's definitely a case where a 30-day, maybe 6-week elimination, you could find that out for yourself pretty easily. So I prefer to go that route, and it really empowers, I think, the client to understand that about themselves.
How do you approach that as a practitioner? I mean, I'm assuming there's got to be some therapeutic or some mindset things that have to happen, because most of us are not in, when I say most of us, I mean most of our world or our country at this point are not in tune with our bodies, right? We're running through the drive-through, grabbing food as quickly as we possibly can with no thought as to what is this happening to my, what is this doing to my system? It's just like this go, 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 go world. And we don't take time to like tune into our bodies and what they're asking for, what our body's asking us not to take more of. How do you get to that place? I'm assuming you get clients that aren't in tune.
Oh yeah.
How do you get them to that place? If you can explain that in a
yeah.
I'm assuming that's a
hard one.
Big question, but I would love to hear your take on that.
It's definitely probably the hardest thing I have to try to explain and teach. And it's not something that happens overnight or even in a week, month, year. Like it's something that you just have to kind of start getting some ideas about. And when I started paleo, I had no idea what it meant to be intuitive or to like think about what I was eating. It was like, I came from the fitness world. So I was used to the 6 small meals, 200 calories at each meal. Like, I can't even talk about it. It's so bad. But so I had no idea. And then I slowly gained this knowledge, which I think the biggest thing is, first of all, you have to have a why. You have to have a bigger why that's beyond like, I want to lose 10 pounds or whatever it is. Like have this thing that you really want to do, whether it's heal a certain thing, feel a certain way, be able to play with your kids a certain amount of time, something like that. Have this really good reason for wanting to understand your body and know what to feed it. So I think that's the first thing. And then the easiest thing, like the biggest thing I think people can do right now is ask yourself some questions before you take your plate of food. Like the one that I love to do is this going to make me happy and healthy? Because when you're eating keto, I think we can all agree it's so delicious. Like the food is just so good that I get so happy to eat my food. Mm-hmm. But it could be this giant salad, but I have this avocado and sunflower seeds on it, and I have my homemade ranch dressing, and it's like, this is amazing. So I'm happy and I'm healthy because I'm getting this giant plate of veggies. I'm having this tons of nutrient density. So I think that's a really big question to answer. But you can also just ask questions like, am I eating this out of emotion versus actually being hungry? I think that's a huge one. Am I actually hungry, or am I eating because I'm bored, sad, tired, frustrated, out with my friends, whatever? So I think those are some really good questions to ask. And if you are actually hungry, then open your fridge, and what calls to you? What actually sounds good? It could be like 8:00 in the morning, but you have steak left over from the night before. And maybe you are so used to eating cereal or eggs or whatever, but maybe that steak sounds good. Yeah. Then eat it.
Yeah.
You know, like you have the power, and you will get those like intuition type moments where if you want that steak, then eat it because maybe you need more iron. Maybe, like there's something where something within that steak is what your body needs. So you will get that if you ask those questions.
Yeah, that's interesting. Eric would be eating liver every day.
Not every day, just once a week. No, because that's all I need. The vitamin A and everything else, choline, everything, that's all you need once a week. But I love the taste of it, which is kind of...
I cannot do it. I wish I could.
And your house would stink
my wife, she hates it when I do fish and liver once a week. She does not like fish and neither the smell. But I tease all my biofitters. I got a few eating liver, so that's pretty good.
That's good. Yeah, that's pretty good.
So, yeah.
You guys both mentioned big salads, and I just have to say the running joke at my house right now with my wife and kids is how big my salad bowl is. So I actually take my wife's largest mixing bowl.
Oh yeah.
And that has become my salad bowl.
Yes. I definitely do that too.
Because I'm walking around the house with a giant mixing bowl of salad and just eating it. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's good.
Love it.
So let's talk about, let's transition a little bit and talk about hormone balance or imbalance. Mm-hmm. First off, let's give our listeners kind of a baseline. What is hormonal balance? What is this idea that we're talking about?
Well, I mean, if you want to get really specific, I would say hormonal balance is when you have obviously all of your sex hormones in check, but this would also include things like thyroid and cortisol, things we talked about earlier. But if we're talking specifically about your sex hormones, I mean, every single day of our cycle as a woman, we have a different kind of dance that our hormones do together, specifically progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone just kind of hangs out there, but it's still an important part of it. But they do this dance throughout the month, and it's very important for that dance to be like on. And if it's not, you will feel it. You will definitely have symptoms of that, and a lot of women do, which is why we're here. So, things like obviously having abnormal menstrual cycles, missing menstrual cycles, really bad PMS, especially if you have painful cramps, bloating, and like water retention kind of thing happening, migraines. There's a lot of times where women won't ovulate. And so this causes infertility type issues. There's just so much that can happen. And one of the biggest things that I see, especially in the ketogenic community, because a lot of people come to keto for weight loss and it doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. Well, for women specifically, it doesn't happen. Yeah. And I know that I know you see it. So, but it's, when we can look deeper and we look at those cortisol levels and the health of the adrenals, but also into those sex hormones, which they are very connected. The health of your adrenals and how your sex hormones are dancing are very much connected. If we look at that, then we can see, there's no way this is going to happen because you are imbalanced. That dance isn't happening at the appropriate times of the month. Your cortisol is way off. So all of those are the symptom, I guess, of all of that is weight gain or inability to lose weight until you get that regulated. So that's one of the reasons why I love keto as an intervention for balancing hormones if it's done correctly.
So talk a little bit about that. What does that mean?
So this is the hard part because, again, diet mentality, previous fat fear that we're not quite over because we were told 10 years ago that fat was bad for us and will cause heart disease and all this stuff and will make you fat. So all of that leads to basically women trying to do keto. So, and then they are going into it way too fast too, which we talked about, but they are going into it basically just reducing their carbs and keeping everything else the same. So, you know, when they're used to having rice, now they're having cauliflower rice. They're used to having noodles, now they're having zucchini noodles, which is great. And I highly recommend all of that, but put some fat on it. Because if you just lower your carbs and you go into that state, then all you're doing is lowering your food intake, which, like I talked about, huge stressor on the body. And you're not actually getting into ketosis. So then you're just low carb, low food, super stressful, instead of high fat, low carb, ketogenic, producing ketones. And then it's like, oh, your body's like, woo, this is great. I have all this energy on my body. I know everything is safe. I have this homeostasis effect going on. I'm healing all this stuff. And then your hormones can do the same thing. So there's that huge difference between it being stressful and it being therapeutic.
Are there circumstances that you've run into with either yourself or clients where, however they're doing keto, whether they're doing it correctly or not, actually throws, because you're talking about keto balancing those out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or at least balancing everything else out in the body, mm-hmm. and giving the hormones room and
mm-hmm.
and space and the energy to balance themselves out, right?
Right.
Have you seen the opposite? Because the reason I ask is because I've seen things online where people
mm-hmm.
are telling, no keto for women because of this, because of hormone issues, yada, yada, yada. What is that? How can we kind of put that information in its place so that women know that it can really help them?
I have so many case studies of women finally getting their hormones in check by going keto.
Wow.
So many, to the point where I'm like, okay, those people that are talking on their blog about how it didn't work, clearly we're doing something very wrong. And that's why I have the course that I have, because like I said, we're taking that transition slowly. So it's not one day this, the next day keto. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I'm making sure these women are eating enough food. As I mentioned, we already came to it from a diet mentality. And so we already were probably eating too little, but then we also, then we go keto and we hear like, oh, you can go like 14 hours without eating, and do all these fasts and everything. But if you're not ready for that, then that could potentially be harmful. And I'm not opposed to fasting, but I think it just needs to happen at the right time for each individual person. So making sure they're getting enough food in this nutrient-dense ketogenic approach is really super important, and making sure they're getting into ketosis.
Yeah.
So those are the three things, because if you do that, and it just makes sense. If you're thinking about that, all of that sounds pretty darn amazing and pretty darn healthy and really a stress-free environment. You're producing ketones, you're eating tons of nutrient-dense foods, and you're taking it slowly. So you're not giving your body any reason to freak out and like, what's happening today kind of situation. Sounds good to me.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you clearly from your experience, anybody who's doing it quote unquote correctly, right? Because we all have our own style, but there are some foundational things you
mm-hmm.
need to understand about the ketogenic diet, and you can't vary from those or it's not going to have the same effect on your body. So most of those who are out there talking about the possibility of their hormones being thrown out of balance or maybe even out of balance worse than they already were, are probably doing something that is not correct in the ketogenic lifestyle. So that's the perfect segue into some of the value that you're bringing to this podcast today, which is, I mean, you've already brought great value so far, but I loved this point that you sent over, which was common mistakes women make in living a keto lifestyle. And I think this will be so valuable for our listeners, because if we can identify these mistakes, especially if you're one that is trying keto out and seems to be failing, or it seems to be taking your body out of that imbalance, your hormones out of that imbalance, I think understanding those mistakes is so key. And I think this is awesome. So let's dive in. What are some of the most common mistakes you see women making when trying to live ketogenic?
Well, the first one, like I mentioned, not eating enough fat. So there's always, I mean, and I'm not someone who, like I mentioned, does super crazy things with macronutrient calculations and percentages and all this stuff, but you just have to eat enough fat. You've got to get to the point where your body understands, okay, my glucose is at this point where it's not enough to provide energy throughout the day, but I have these fatty acids that I have access to and can produce ketones. So it has to be at that level for a certain period of time until you're safely in ketosis, to let that process happen, to change your metabolic function. So I think that's really important. And it's so hard for people to understand how much fat they need to be eating because it seems so counterintuitive to what we've been told.
How do you approach that with people if we're not, if they're not tracking meticulously their macros, and maybe they're not getting enough because either they're not listening to their body or their body's not telling them to eat more fat? How do you help your clients, or how do you help people get enough fat to where they're going to go into ketosis?
Well, in my actual course, which is how I work with people, we do have, I created this whole different tracking system that doesn't use numbers or anything like that, but we can still make sure that there's the ratios are right. So I do that for 4 weeks with my clients. Yeah. So, but it's a block system. It has nothing to do with, they don't have to calculate anything, which is really nice because I do need to make sure they're getting that in. And I do need to make sure that's the only way that I can be absolutely sure that all these women are getting into ketosis. But you can also, I've given, I have a podcast that's a really popular episode about how to get in ketosis without counting macros. And really, I just give kind of like this baseline of what a plate of food would look like. So if you're having 3 meals a day, you're going to try to have like 3 to 4 servings of fat at every single meal. So that could be like, half an avocado, a tablespoon of any sort of oil or fat that you're cooking with, anything like that. Eggs.
Half cup of nuts.
Yeah. Like two eggs would be one, that kind of thing. So so I would recommend if anyone's interested to go find that episode because I lay it all out there because you can also, and I do teach this in my class, you can also you figure out what your plate of food looks like. And that's your baseline. That's kind of your standard thing. And of course, things are going to go in and out and change a little bit, but you do have this picture of what it would look like. So I really, because of that diet mentality situation that most of us are in, I really don't like people to go to MyFitnessPal or start, doing all these percentages and calculating all their food because food is food. It should stay food. It's not a number. It's not an equation.
Yeah. Do your clients journal their food or how do you, and that's kind of an accountability measurement for you?
They journal their food. Well, they're basically just using the system that I have in place to kind of tally up what they've eaten throughout the day in a very basic way and just kind of a guesstimate type situation. But they're also journaling how they feel after those meals on all levels so that, again, we know maybe you're someone that needs a little bit more carbohydrate at lunch or a little bit more fat at dinner or whatever. So then it helps with that intuitive eating thing. Yeah.
It's so cool to see the different approaches. I mean, as I've worked with Eric personally, we're very much, Eric, I can let you speak for yourself, but
I'm a numbers guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? He used the word guy.
Yeah,
so I'm thinking maybe that's part of the difference here.
Yeah, that could be.
That could be. I like numbers, and I think, and I love all approaches. I think there's not one size that fits all.
Totally.
Some numbers will teach you where to be, then you're on your own. Okay. So you know the possible carb and the protein and the fat content of that food, because we're all repetitious. We only have 5 or 6 foods we all eat from, when you think about it. But sooner or later, through numbers, you realize that that's a pretty bit of, approximate of what is going to keep you in ketosis. See, my big fear is I got too many people that will go out of ketosis unknowingly. And, they forget, well, I had a little carb here, a little more carb here, a little more carb. Next thing you know, they're like, hey, I'm not in ketosis. I'm showing 0.2,
Right.
So as a coach, it's just my perspective is just trying to stay on them until they learn. Because as you coach this, people expect a miracle in 6 to 8 weeks. And they've been using their body for 20, 30 years, glucose dependent. Their brain is glucose dependent, and they expect to undo that in 6 to 8 weeks. And it's such a long process. Give it a year minimum, and you've been in what, a year and a half? So it just gets better the longer you're in it.
Absolutely.
So, I like your approach. There's a lot
it's all about these things that us as women go through in our heads, like we could, I'm not speaking for every woman, but I know a lot of us can become very obsessive and, overthink it. And especially when we want weight loss, and it becomes, again, a stressor that we don't need to have.
There's one number I hate, and it's a scale. Yeah. I have no weighing, and I'm sure you don't let people.
No.
That mentality is gone now. We gotta get rid of
terrible.
It. Gotta get rid of it. Yeah, that's good.
All right. So mistake number 1, not eating enough fat. What else you got for us?
Also, like I mentioned, not eating enough food overall. So again, getting back to that point where, and this kind of goes into mistake number 3 too, but we start fasting too early or too soon. And then all of a sudden we're eating like 500 calories a day. And again, I don't count calories. I don't promote counting calories, anything like that. But if you're only eating 1 meal a day, there's no way you could get the right amount of nutrition in that meal. So because I'm so focused on the nutrient density, and because I am so focused on women healing their hormones and their cortisol and their thyroid, I think that the best and easiest way I've seen time and time again to do that is to nourish your body appropriately. Give it the amount of energy that it needs for the workouts you're doing, for your job, for what you do at home with the kids, for how active you are. You need to nourish your body. There may come a time, yes, where you are at the right spot where you can fast. And then maybe not every day you're having that same amount of food, and you're okay because you have the ketone production and everything's going well there. But to get into ketosis and to heal your body, it takes eating the food. And it's very, 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 we had one more, hard to teach women that, because we cannot get past the calories in versus calories out myth.
Yep.
No.
Get past it.
Which, by the way, is not math. It's
not math.
Bogus.
No.
It just doesn't make any sense.
And so that's, I love that. And I will attest, even from my perspective as a man, I could not believe the amount of food that I started eating when I started keto. And now it's normal to me, and I get it in 2 meals a day, intermittent fasting. But I was shocked. I was like, are you serious? I have to eat all of this? And that's my perspective, right? That doesn't come from a perspective of being pressured to diet all the time and, do all of this kind of stuff. And so I can only imagine that that's got to be a huge thing to overcome with a lot of women when they start thinking about a ketogenic diet, because you're going to eat a lot of food.
Yeah. And it's going to feel uncomfortable, especially if you, again, are coming from 1,200 calories a day or whatever diet you were doing. Sometimes it's even less. And your metabolism is shot. Like, it's going to feel weird. You're going to feel uncomfortable, but your body will respond. But you just have to go through that process. It makes such a big difference.
Yeah. I love it, Shawn. This is awesome.
Yeah.
This is concrete stuff for people to take. And I really appreciate that. So you got one more for us?
Oh, sure. I could think of one more. Okay.
I thought you said you had 3.
Do I? Oh, I'm sure I do. I just feel like I don't know what we haven't talked about yet. Let me think of something new. Common mistakes.
You don't have to force it if it doesn't feel right. But
well, we've already talked about the the easing into, which a lot of women don't do, which is really important. So we talked about that.
How about with your women? They all going to plateau. Okay.
Yes.
So they're going to lose initial weight, and then they're going to plateau, going to stop. All right. And they want to get over that next hurdle. Okay. And I have my ways. I go through, with some, blood marker testing and the thyroid and everything else, and their symptoms. But you're experiencing that a lot because you're doing mostly women. So what's your approach on that when they lost their 15 pounds and they're stuck at a new spot? And how do you get them through that?
So that's when I really recommend finding out the state of your adrenals. So what your cortisol is doing throughout the day, finding out the state of your sex hormones. So what are your hormones doing throughout the month? I do that all through salivary hormone testing. Okay. And I have another class that we just do that. So, but also could be looking at your gut health. And if you have issues with digestion, that's another huge reason why women don't lose weight right away is because their digestive health is off, or they're eating foods that they're sensitive to. I think that's another huge thing. So being able to look at those food sensitivities, or even just eliminating the dairy or artificial sweeteners or whatever for a period of time. So inevitably there is a stall. Right. And so when that happens, and especially if it's the case where there still is excess weight on the body that is unhealthy, then it's just your body telling you that there's something else off.
Right.
There's something else to look at. It could be the thyroid. So I have a lot of people that will do a thyroid check after that,
It's like putting that puzzle together. Everything went really great the first 4 weeks, 6 weeks. And then all of a sudden you come to that stall, and then you got to say, all right, let's put this puzzle together piece by piece, and let's go down that path and get it figured out.
It's just continuing the digging.
It's discouraging for women because they do hit that, men, I can keep them pretty steady. They get big drops, and then they stall a little bit too. And then they pick back up.
Then they get more. Yeah.
But a lot of times they want to eat less, and you got to teach them, no.
I know.
We're back to that old, diet.
Oh, I know. That's the first thing that they're like, oh, I'm stalled here. I'm just going to drop, this and this off. I'm going to eat less fat. And then it's like, then you're not going to be in ketosis. And then all of this is just not going to happen. Yeah. It's an endless battle.
It's tough.
But that's why we're here.
Yeah, that's right. That's why we do it.
Get a coach. Get a coach.
Yes.
Get a coach. Get some accountability. Get somebody who cares enough about you and will invest in you enough to say, no, let's look deeper.
Yes.
That's what I wish as I'm hearing you guys talk about this. And I wish that point of plateau was almost celebrated a little bit, because that is your body's invitation to say, you've done awesome. Now we need to dig deeper.
But there's something more.
There's something more. Let's cleanse more of this out. Let's get more holistically healthy, all of that kind of stuff. There's a reason your body is doing this. And it's not because you're eating too much food.
Right.
There's more elements than food. And food and exercise, right? And there's just so much more to consider. That way more than I do, Shawn. But I just think I wish we could help people reframe that to celebrate it and say, oh my gosh, I'm there. Now my body's begging for something more. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That approach, I think, is a lot more conducive to progress.
Yes.
Than getting discouraged by it. And
that's really what leads to lasting health, which I think is so important. And it not being this thing that you're doing to lose 20 pounds so that you can gain 25 back. This is long-term, forever things that you're going to find out about your body and your health to keep you healthy way into the future.
Yeah. It's not an event.
Exactly.
We're really against event.
Yes.
Meeting. So we have to change that event to a lifestyle. That's our challenge.
Yeah.
If it gets them to me or gets them to you, that event, that's great. It's
Do you want to look and feel good for the event, or do you want to look and feel good for life?
Oh yeah, I love that.
That's right.
Well, this has been awesome. Shawn, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with? I mean, you've given us tons of value. Thank you so much. Is there anything, like one last note, anything that you want to make sure the women that listen to our podcast understand about ketosis, about you, about just life and approach in general?
I think the biggest thing that I'm such a fan of right now is just because keto is so big and getting bigger by the day, there's endless information that you can tap into. There, you could honestly read blogs for like an entire year and get new information. And what it leaves you with is this list a mile long of all these rules. And what I really like to tell women especially is to take a step back from those rules, find a few people that you trust, that you can get the information that you need from, and leave the rest. Just leave it all, because you can make up your own set of rules based on what your body wants, needs, it tells you, and what makes you feel good. And when you have too many of those rules, and keto is hugely notorious for all this, it gets a little bit confusing, and then you just end up not doing it at all, right? Yeah. And then we don't want that. So I'd say just scrap most of it, keep a few pearls and a few people you trust, and go with what your body tells you.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that's good.
Anything else, Eric, that you want to leave the conversation with?
No, because then we just go down another long topic, like exogenous ketones, daily now.
We can
guilt, shame. We could go a lot of that stuff.
When the feedback comes in, Shawn, and all of our audience loves you, we can talk about maybe having you back on.
Yeah, of course. Happy to.
Yeah,
I'm happy to.
Well, thanks so much for biohacking with us today, Eric and Shawn. This has been awesome. And I want to thank you for joining us on this quest for optimal fitness. If you're ready to begin your own journey and live your life in ketosis, be sure to check out biofitcoaching.com or Biofit Coaching on Facebook. And then, Shawn, I'm going to give you another, the very last thing, plug all of your avenues for people to work with you, get with you, just kind of talk about the best way for them to get in touch with you if they're interested in some of the things you've talked about.
Yeah, probably the best way would be my website, shawnmynar.com. My Keto for Women show podcast. You can find that on iTunes or YouTube or literally everywhere. So you can check that out. And then the course that I was talking about that teaches women about ketosis is called the Fat Burning Female Project. And you can find that on my website as well. Instagram and Facebook at Shawn Mynar Health. And I am super, super into the Instagram stories. So
cool. That's helpful, especially with some of this stuff, to have that daily reminder.
Totally.
Spell your name for everybody one more time, just so they.
ShawnMynar.
Yeah, I love that spelling. All right, cool. So join us on Facebook, biofitcoaching.com. There's a lot of good discussion going on there. And if this has helped you in any way, please consider going on iTunes, leaving us a review and a 5-star rating. We would love that. That helps us reach more people. And also, finally, if this has helped you at all, the best compliment you can give us is sharing the podcast with your friends and family who need this information and would benefit from it. So thank you so much again, guys. This has been awesome. And until next time, stay keto.